All right, we'll go back to our basketball talk in a second. Jeff, you ready to talk some football?
I am.
We got the best ESPN NFL front office insider, former GM of the Jets, executive VP of football operations of the Dolphins. Mike Tannebaum joins us. Mike, thanks for the time today.
Good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Oh, we are fantastic. We get to talk some football. This is a great thing.
So, Mike, we got to ask you to start before we get to anything real serious. Is you started as an intern for the Pittsfield Mets. How does a guy make it from the Pittsfield Mets to running the NFL team in the largest city in America?
Yeah, a lot of good fortune. Just first one in, last to leave, right place at the right time, and just had a lot of breaks along the way, and people like Coach Parcells and Coach Belichick just gave me opportunities, and was able to work my way up the ladder.
What's it like to get to work with minds like that in the game? Coach Parcells, Coach Belichick, you've been on other staffs with names that people have embedded in their heads. For you, it sounds like you were just a sponge sitting there learning under the learning tree.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, you could be on campus for about 10 minutes, and if you had something to contribute, like, they wanted to hear it. And the standards were the standards, and both, like, very methodical in their decision making, wanted good information, and both were dynamic in their own way. And I was just very fortunate in the formative years of my career to be around them and just try to learn as much as I could and be accretive, when it was appropriate to do so.
What did you learn most from those individuals and from the individuals that you also work with?
I would say process. Process leads to results. I think sometimes, myself included, I would be a lot more outcome sort of like driven in terms of what we were trying to do, more so like how we're going to get there, what steps we're going to take. And I think in particular, like Coach Belichick, one of his many superpowers was he was able to distill a ton of information and put it into information that people could consume and understand and act on, and understanding who your audience is. So those were some of the many lessons I learned along the way from them.
We just went through another draft here, and before we get to our local pick, which you've had some thoughts on, I wanted to get your take overall on talent evaluation and how that's evolved and changed over the decades. With all the data available now, has it gone too far from old school talent evaluation? Where are we now on the pendulum of how we evaluate?
I think it's just having good information. I want as much information as possible. It helps sort of like define the decision-making process in terms of, I had no problem taking an outlier, but I wanted to know if and when a player we were taking was too hot, too tall, too small, overweight, underweight, didn't have the requisite measurables in some meaningful way. And that didn't mean that we couldn't take a player outside those norms, but at least we wanted to make as informed decisions as we possibly could.
Information can be good, and sometimes information can be bad. When do you know, as a general manager, when to take the information and when to trust your own eyes?
Yeah, great question. We were just talking about that the other day. We have a think tank, and we look at different topics, and we sort of went back and looked at good decisions in the draft and bad decisions. And not to generalize here, but one of the sort of themes that we all sort of coalesced around was that oftentimes the most recent information wasn't the best information. And what I mean by that specifically, if you go to the draft, and this is, again, generalizing, but over a 10, 20-year period, oftentimes the first grade on the player would be the most accurate, meaning that as you went along the process and you added things like the Senior Bowl or the Combine or coaches getting involved, medical, security, all the other sort of ancillary aspects of player evaluation, and you got away from that original grade that you gave to a player when he just played football, oftentimes that first grade was the most accurate one.
I was reading somewhere, I saw you helped get our own talent evaluator, Howie Roseman, his start in the league. Talk about a young Howie Roseman and how you've enjoyed watching him move along to where he is now.
Yeah, he's just one of many of people that knocked on the door, and there were so many people that helped me in my career that I just always feel like I have a affirmative responsibility to pay it forward. And Howie reached out multiple times and referred him to Joe Banner, who at the time was running the Eagles, and Howie absolutely deserved everything he's accomplished. He's worked incredibly hard, taken advantage of opportunities. No one handed him anything. Self-made guy, someone I have a lot of respect for.
What's that like for you to be a mentor now as somebody who has blazed his own trail, done so many different things? Now, obviously, you have the ESPN gig on top of your prior experience, your law degree. You probably get your brain picked on a lot of things. How special is that for you to just be able to give people that opportunity people gave you?
Yeah, it's very fulfilling, to be candid. And again, there were so many people that gave me an opportunity or gave me some time. And, there was people like Ron Wolf when I was fortunate enough to become a GM at 36 that I called him all the time. And, he didn't owe anything to me, and he just was always gracious. And I always felt like, boy, if I ever had the opportunity to pay it back, I certainly wanted to do so.
Mike, we seem to be in an age of player empowerment. As a guy that's now not running a team, how would you deal with the way that players are now empowered and trying to take more control of their careers and where they play and who they play with?
Well, I think context is really important. First of all, I think overall it's healthy from this standpoint. It sort of creates an obligation for organizational excellence where from top all the way down to the bottom, you really have to treat players well. And when a player has the sort of, stature to be able to do something about it, if they want to, they certainly can. But I think player empowerment is a little bit of a broad term, and we certainly talk about it a lot on ESPN. And I think he's under contract, and that's meaningfully different than where I think overall players do have a bigger seat at the table. I think they deserve it. I think it puts just more of a responsibility on an organization to try to get to know their players, understand their players, and try to make them as fulfilled as possible.
For your own style, if you had to deal with a player who is out in the media talking about you, how do you deal with that? How do you develop the thick skin to kind of just go about your job and do what's right for the team when people are attacking you?
Yeah, unfortunately for me, that's not a hypothetical. I can give you some real candid insight on that. It stinks. I mean, I said to my staff for years that I think you could really bifurcate feelings in this sort of respect. When you cut players, like that was a responsibility we had, and we had to handle it like professionals, but there was something seriously wrong with us if we didn't feel deep inside like this wasn't painful. And the same really was true for criticism, which was, you had to handle it like a pro. You had a responsibility for your franchise to do what you felt was in the absolute best interest of the organization. And if agents or players didn't like that, they were going to, use any means necessary to get the result they wanted. And you just had to steel yourself to know that, hey, like for me, it was always about if I had the head coach and owner on the same page, I could handle anything.
So before we let you go, I did want to ask you about our own draft pick, Devonte Smith. Obviously, lots of takes on either side. I saw you pretty confident that he can overcome his frame. I've seen comparisons like Marvin Harrison, and I saw you say it seemed like the game against Ohio State where he went into that stadium saying they're not going to let him beat us, and then he beat them, really sold you. Can you talk about what you see from Devonte Smith and why you think he's going to be successful?
Yeah, no, that's about right. Ohio State's obviously a great program, terrific coaching. And, we were talking about Coach Belichick before. Coach Belichick, one of his axioms was always, hey, we're going to lose. Our opponent is going to beat us left-handed, meaning we're going to take away what they do great. And clearly Ohio State, when you watch that game, was trying to shade some coverage over the top. They were trying to double him, jam him, and he was on the biggest stage, the best player on the field, without question. Jalen Waddle, I thought, was extremely impressive trying to play on one leg, but Devonte Smith was tremendous. And he does, to me, look like Marvin Harrison. And if there was a concern, certainly his physique and stature would be that. But he's been able to do that, through the rigors of a tough SEC schedule. Obviously, Philadelphia needed a receiver. He should be a bona fide number one. I'm sure over time he'll add good weight, especially in his lower body, where, again, he could withstand the rigors of going through now a 17-game season. And if he can, just given his hands, his quickness, there's a lot to like if I'm a Philadelphia Eagle fan.
What's your thoughts on where the Eagles are now? A lot of change this offseason. Nick Sirianni in at the head coach. Jalen Hurts is going to be the quarterback. Obviously, this draft pick, lots of turnover in players. What's your thoughts on what this team has done in the offseason?
Yeah, I think they're going in the right direction. I think Nick Sirianni is a problem solver. He's a really bright. I think he has a really good scheme. he's very player friendly. And I think, they'll be able to see what they have with Jalen Hurts, and they're sitting there in all likelihood with 3 number 1 picks in 2022, which obviously allows you to operate from a position of strength. But, I'm sure from their purview, if Hurts can continue to develop, those picks could be used on something besides a quarterback.
Mike, we can't thank you enough for the time. I always look forward to catching you on TV. Can you let people know where they can catch you next?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Real Tannenbaum, and I got a bunch of things coming up next week, and it's been great to be on with you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate the time. You have a great day, Mike.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys.